Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I'm going to start by introducing myself, and then I'll pass it on to our very exciting guest that I have here with us tonight. So my name is Savannah Jorgensen. I am the Hunger Advocacy Fellow with the Lutheran Office of Public Policy in California. I'm sure many of you watching this video have recognized me from our advocacy in quarantine times and other various efforts from our office. And I will turn it over to Fatima here from EnviroVoters to introduce herself briefly before we get into this discussion.
Yes. Hi, Savannah. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for all the advocacy and work you and your organization are doing. My name is Fatima Iqbal Zubair, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Manager here at California EnviroVoters, and really excited to talk about the bills we're going to talk about.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Fatima. Today, we're going to take a deeper dive at 3 environmental bills we're tracking at LOPP ahead of our environmental justice-themed Lutheran Lobby Day coming up in May. And those 3 bills are AB 249 by Assemblymember Holden, SB 253 from Senator Wiener, and SB 674 from Senator Gonzalez. And so I'm going to turn it over to Fatima again to get us started on AB 249 to start talking about a brief overview of the bill, how this bill will impact our communities throughout the state, and where this bill is now and what we can maybe do to advance it through the legislature. So Fatima, take it away.
Sure. Okay. So I might not have the information on the specific committees for like, where the bill's in, but I kind of know what house they're in. We'll talk about that. All right. So AB 249 basically requires water utilities to test water faucets and fixtures in transitional kindergarten through grade 12 schools for lead concentrations greater than 5 parts per billion over the next 5 years. And basically, if there are faucets and fixtures that are found to exceed this, 5 parts per billion standard, which we know there should be no lead in the water. So in my opinion, like no lead, any amount of lead is bad. But if these faucets and fixtures are found to have this 5 parts per billion, they must be made inoperable until the lead is basically mitigated or the fixture is replaced. And basically, yeah, that is the general gist of this bill. It will just basically require testing for lead contamination of drinking water and food preparation faucets in those buildings over the next 5 years. And, I can definitely talk about the implications. Let me talk a little bit about where you say, like, where the bill is right now. So the bill right now is still on the assembly side. I wish I had the information about the specific committee because I would have put that in, put it in here. But I know all bills are going to be heard, the end of May. So this one will be heard by the end of May in the floor session. I'm pretty sure it hasn't gone to appropriations yet. So it has to go there as well. But yeah, so that is kind of the gist of this bill.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And for those of you attending advocacy in quarantine, we do have a bill tracker going from our office. So I kind of know
okay,
where
awesome.
bills are
Please,
and stuff.
yes.
So people can reach out to me if they don't have access to that yet. But we are tracking those and kind of keeping track of where they are as we see them coming through coalitions and our own just tracking purposes. With that, great. Could you talk about SB 253 then? The climate.
Yeah, yes, of course. I can. And I don't know if you wanted me to also do like implications of the bill. I can go into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
That'd be great.
Okay. Yes, I would love to. Just to know how much time we had. But yeah, so for the Holden bill, the reason it's really important, one, I can just share personally, I actually worked in a school. I'm a former teacher, and this happens a lot in a lot of local communities where, housing schools are built on contaminated land. And I've seen the health impacts, right, in terms of the students' health and everything. And this doesn't happen in wealthier communities. So this is definitely an environmental justice bill. I believe Assemblymember Holden has introduced this bill previously. And, the fact that like it hasn't passed or made it all the way through it is really unfortunate, because it's literally, like I mentioned, Savannah, like there should be no amount of lead. That's really okay. And just some of the opposition, just if I can address that really quick, is, they're talking about how much this would cost, and the kind of like the money measure, the school boards. I understand that, but like the basic right that folks should have at school, the students should have, is that they're in a healthy environment. That's even more basic than what they're learning, right? That when they drink water, their faucet, that they're not going to be contaminated or have health impacts. So I just wanted to address that. Yes, and then the next bill you wanted me to talk about was it SB 674? Was that it?
Go ahead. Yeah, go with that one.
Okay, great. Okay, SB 674. So this is the Refinery Air Pollution Transparency and Reduction Act, which would basically strengthen protections for fence line communities living next to California's refineries and increase oversight. And this would basically improve California's fence line monitoring program, and provide environmental justice communities, which was where we know the brunt of the pollution is, right? Like I know I live in one of those districts which has about a third of the refineries. And I'll be honest with you, like they're not really held accountable, and a lot of it has to do with the current programs we have and how we need to make them better. So this bill would improve California's fence line monitoring program and provide EJ communities with transparency into toxic pollution and basic protections that they're legally entitled to. So what this bill specifically does is it would conduct third-party audits, right? Which is so important because it's independent. Third-party audits of their monitoring systems, identify the causes of the actual excess emissions, and perform the corrective action, ensure that there's proper facility coverage, and also here's the part that's really important: provide adequate public notification when emission thresholds are exceeded, which is really, really important, and make the data accessible to the public. A lot of times we have refineries polluting and, yes, we can call, AQMD and figure out our pollution levels or have, special gadgets installed in our homes. But I really think that should be the job of the refineries, right? If they're in the communities, to make that information accessible to the public. And so that's what this bill would do. It would improve the monitoring system, but also make that information public to available to the public, which I think is really, really key.
Absolutely, that's great. Thank you for sharing about that bill as well. And then the last bill, just to briefly cover, is SB 253, the Climate Corporate Accountability Act, whatever the long name is. So take it away on that one.
Yeah, sure. And basically the past two bills that I discussed, we are supporting it here at EnviroVoters, and SB 674 is on the Senate side. So hopefully that'll make it to, the Assembly side after the May floor deadline and all that. Okay, so SB 253. All right, so this is a bill that California EnviroVoters is actually sponsoring. So it's a huge bill for us. It's the one bill we're sponsoring, so we're putting a lot of time and effort into this. So really grateful that, your organization is also supporting it, so thank you. And this is a Climate Corporate Data Accountability Act, right, which is really great. It's another accountability bill. And this one basically says if you are a corporation in California that makes gross revenues of 1 billion, right, or greater, and you do business in California, to publicly disclose your greenhouse gas emissions. So we have an inventory. Believe it or not, we don't have that. Now, the great part is a lot of companies already do this. So there is, a lot of the opposition is saying, well, there's no way to get this done. How do you monitor at every level of emissions? Well, there is a way to get it done. A lot of companies are doing it, and there's protocols that are also set in place for how companies calculate these emissions. Particularly, the three sorts of emissions that we want companies to calculate are Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. And the part that I really want to focus on, rather than kind of going into the technical details of each of those, is Scope 3. A lot of what's missing are the Scope 3 emissions, Savannah, because it's basically emissions that you might not see directly from the corporation, right? So think of like the supply chain. There might be a corporation facility, but they are part of their operation is requiring business, downstream, right, or in their supply chain, and that's not usually calculated, but we know that that's still a climate impact, and we need those emissions reported. So that's what this bill would do. Basically, these corporate disclosures would be submitted to an emissions registry and posted online for public viewing. So very similar to Gonzalez's bill in terms of its information's available to the public. And so to basically ensure that the reporting is also accurate and truthful, companies would also submit their disclosures for an audit, just to make sure it's accurate. And then finally, CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board, will contract with an outside entity to make a one-time report discussing these GHG emissions within our state climate goals and our state GHG emissions reductions goals, which is great. So there's a direct impact in how knowing this information and how it'll basically help us meet our SB 100 goals and renewable energy goals. So it's a really, really pivotal bill.
Awesome. Yeah, really, I'm excited about that bill as well. Hopefully we can all work together to get that passed this year. And I think there is a more in-depth informational video on EnviroVoters website, right? That people can watch. Yes,
there definitely is. This bill actually today, as we're speaking, so I know about this bill, like exactly where it's because it's a sponsored bill. The others, we're here at EnviroVoters, and I apologize, we're following hundreds of bills in the environmental realm. So, I don't always know which exact committee a bill is in. But for this bill, it did go to Senate Judiciary today. I'm sure you are tracking that.
Yeah.
We had one of our team members in there, crossing my fingers that it did pass through. I don't think we're gonna have any roadblocks there, but Want to flag that the help we need, I'm sure that's a question you're going to ask next, but particularly for this bill, is when it gets the assembly side. Savannah, this bill actually died by, I believe, only one vote in the assembly side. So it was very close to being passed and hopefully signed by the governor. So, we're hoping this is the year that, this bill will really pass, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I remember that being brought up that it might face more difficulty in the assembly. So definitely something to look forward to potentially on our lobby day, depending on where it is by then in May. Awesome. Well, that was definitely great overviews of all those bills. I guess one final thing we can leave people with, what are some just like two main points on each bill that people can kind of try to remember or write down when they're thinking about talking about advocacy around these bills?
Yeah, good, very good point. So kind of like when you're lobbying, what's really helpful is to have those like talking points. So I kind of go backwards the order we went. So SB 253, it's really a corporate accountability bill. What I want folks to take away is it's not going to threaten jobs, right? It's not about that. It's not even, infecting a company's profit margin because these companies make, billions in dollars. So it's really just an accountability bill to make sure companies are monitoring their emissions, all their emissions, so that we can appropriately address climate change. So that would be my, sort of the main talk point of that bill. Looking at, Gonzalez's bill, SB 674, what I would say is this is also another accountability and transparency and public information bill. And, in the sense of it is giving communities, frontline communities, information on pollution that's coming from refineries, right? So it's giving communities information on pollution that's coming from refineries, but also it's also strengthening protections, increasing oversight of refinery operations, right? It's going to improve the monitoring program that these refineries are currently using. So that would be the headline there. And then for the Holden bill, which is AB 249, the headline for this one is, look, lead, there should be no amount of lead. I can't say that enough. There should really be no amount of lead in water. And the fact that, some member Holden has to put an amount in there tells you that it's crazy that this is opposition to the legislature, because really no amount of lead is okay. So the headline here is, look, we should not have lead in our children's water. When they go to school, they should feel safe. They should feel, healthy. That's the baseline. So even wanting to get a good education is making sure your bodies and your brains are healthy and you're not drinking toxic water. And really what this bill will do is ensure that these facilities are tested, right, for that toxic water, lead contaminated water, and that there's accountability that the fixtures that do have lead are made inoperable, until the lead is mitigated or the fixtures replaced. So that's the headline for that bill. And these are all really the Holden bill. A lot of these are impacting climate justice communities, where we see pollution and climate impacts the most. So thank you. And I'm happy to share more too on I know you wanted me to share about how folks can get activated, but if you want to address that, we can too. But
yeah, thank you so much for that great discussion on these bills that we're not only tracking here at LOPP, but definitely along with our Enviro friends and our other coalitions that we're a part of. For those watching, I hope this deeper look at some of these bills helps you in advance of our Lutheran Lobby Day on Wednesday, May 17th, where they may be featured in our advocacy. I will also be starting to look at these and other environmental bills that potentially will be on the docket for that lobby day in our advocacy and quarantines. On Wednesdays at noon on Zoom. You can find that information on our website. Please start joining those if you haven't already. We're going to be talking about advocacy around these bills in more depth on those as well. And that's definitely a way you can get involved. Otherwise, EnviroVoters has a lot of details about some of these bills that we talked about, especially SB 253 on their website. So I encourage you to take a look at that video as well for more information about that bill and other environmental bills in the state. Otherwise, if you haven't already done so, please register and invite others to register for our lobby day. You can do so on our website as well. And I thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful.
Yay.